Good morning, everyone. We're group number one of NRC 70,876, the course A. And today we are going to explain the part of the skeletal system of the human body. Before we dive into the details, we want to emphasize the phase that guys at work. We are the pensions hub. In order to review the pensions hub, we must study and learn how the human body functions correctly. This knowledge is fundamental on our journey to becoming healthcare professionals that can make the difference in our placement levels. For the duration in task number one of the third unit titled Skeletal System or Presentation Review, we have formed a group consisting in the following members: Aguilar Kevin, Aguirre Fernando, Caiza Allison, Castillo Evelyn, May Person, Chaven Jocelyn, and Criollo Diana. Rubric: Presentation 5, Organization 5, Content 10. Our presentation today will cover key structures that make up the skeletal system as entered in the R tracks. We will begin with the introduction and today's skeletal system and their process to the skull, the skull, the spine, the rib cage, the upper limbs, the pelvis, and finally the lower limbs. I am Evelyn Castillo. I am talking about the introduction of the skeletal system. The human skeleton consists of approximately 206 bones in adults, along with cartilage, joints, and ligaments, collectively making up about 20% of body mass. Understanding the structure of bones is essential before exploring their assembly in the body. The skeletal systems can be categorized into the main divisions: the axial and the appendicular skeletons. The axial skeleton includes bones found on the jaw and torso, such as the skull, vertebral column, and thoracic cage. On the other hand, the appendicular skeleton comprises bones located in the appendages of limbs, including the arms, legs, pelvis, and the shoulders. Bone cells play a crucial role in the maintenance and remodeling of bone tissue. Osteoblasts are bone-forming cells that synthesize and secrete bone matrix, thus contributing to bone mineralization and growth. As the bone matures, osteoblasts become osteocytes, which are mature skeleton includes within the bone matrix. These osteocytes are responsible for maintaining the bone matrix and regulating the balance between bone formation and resorption. Meanwhile, osteoclasts are multinucleated cells that break down the bone matrix during bone resorption and process essential for bone remodeling and the release minerals in the bloodstream. They are mainstays of bone tissues, compact bone, and spongy trabecular bone. Compact bone is made of initial cone or Habermas system, which are composed of concentric layers of bone matrix. Surrounding a central corner contains blood vessels and nerves. This type of bone is primarily located on the diaphyses of long bones and the deep surface of all bones. In contrast, splendid bone is characterized by a network of trabeculae small bone spicules that graded in line of process structure. Bone marrow found in the spaces between the trabecular spongy bone is typically located in the ends on the leg bones, in short and flat bones, and inside some bones.
Now I'm going to talk to you about the skull. The skull is part of the actual bones. It is located before the vertebral column and is the bony structure that encloses the brain. Its function is to protect the brain and provide an attachment site for the facial muscles. First, starting at the top with the skull. The skull is made of 22 different bones. The skull is divided into cranial bones and facial bones. Cranial bones are the ones that protect the brain, and the facial bones are the ones that give structure to the face. Most of the bones in the skull are flat bones, and in the cranium these are connected at serrated lines called sutures. The cranium is made of a bowl as well as a base. The base is divided into anterior, middle, and posterior cranial foci. Together, these produce the cranial cavity where the brain sits. There are also ear cavities and nasal cavities, as well as orbits which house the eyes. Altogether, there are 8 cranial bones. We have the frontal bones, 2 large parietal bones, the occipital bone, 2 temporal bones, the sphenoid bones, and the ethmoid bone. The cranial bones are connected by sutures, and those have specific names. As well, these are the coronal, sagittal, lambdoid, squamous, and occipital-mastoid sutures. We should also mention the foramina, which are holes that nerves and arteries and veins pass through, most notably the foramen magnum at the base of the skull, through which the spinal cord passes. Moving on the facial bones, of which there are 14, we can start with the mandible, which is the lower jaw bone. Then there are the maxillary bones, which form the upper jaw and part of the face. Next, we have two zygomatic bones, which are the cheekbones, nasal bones, which make up the bridge of the nose, lacrimal bones, palatine bones, the vomer, and inferior nasal conchae. Lastly, technically not part of the skull, there is also the hyoid bone, which sits just below the mandible and doesn't connect with any outer bone.
Hello, my name is Israel Aguirre. Next up in the axial skeleton is the vertebral column, also called the spinal column or simply the spine. This is comprised of 26 irregular bones that come together to form a flexible structure in a curvy S shape which supports everything from the skull to the pelvis. The spine can be divided into 5 sections. At the top, we have the cervical vertebrae, which are the first 7. These are known as C1 to C7, with the first cervical vertebrae, C1, also called the atlas, supporting the skull, and the second cervical vertebrae, C2, known as the axis, which allows the head to rotate. The next 12 are called the thoracic vertebrae, labeled T1 to T12. These vertebrae connect to the ribs, forming the rear anchor for the rib cage and help protect vital organs such as the heart and lungs. The remaining 5 are called the lumbar vertebrae, known as L1 to L5. These vertebrae are larger and more robust to support more weight and provide greater stability, especially in the lower back. Below the lumbar vertebrae, we find the sacrum, which is actually 5 vertebrae fused together into a single triangular bone. This bone fits into the pelvis, connecting the spine to the lower body. Lastly, below the sacrum, there is the coccyx, otherwise known as the tailbone. The coccyx consists of 3 to 5 tiny vertebrae fused together. It is a remnant of a vestigial tail. Of course, there is much more to the spine than just the vertebrae. Numerous ligaments keep everything together. The main ones are the anterior and posterior longitudinal ligaments running down the front and back of the column from the neck to the sacrum. There are also shorter ligaments that connect adjacent vertebrae, as well as intervertebral discs. These are cushiony pads made of a nucleus pulposus, which is the more elastic part, surrounded by an annulus fibrosus, which is a tougher layer with lots of collagen. These discs are found between each vertebra, acting as shock absorbers when we run and jump. Now let's look a little closer at an individual vertebra. Each vertebra has a body and a vertebral arch. The whole is the center is called the vertebral foramen, and the spinal cord passes through here. The vertebral arch is made of 2 pedicles and 2 laminae, and from this project various processes. These processes include the spinous process, two transverse processes, and the superior and inferior articular processes. Vertebrae vary slightly depending on where they are found in the column. Cervical vertebrae, for instance, have a spinous process that is very short, a vertebral foramen that is large, and an additional transverse foramen to accommodate vertebral arteries. Thoracic vertebrae have a long spinous process that points downwards and structures called demifacets, which connect to the ribs. Lumbar vertebrae are much larger, with pedicles and laminae that are short and thick and exhibit other slight discrepancies.
My name is Dayana Griollo and I'm going to talk about the thoracic cage and its parts. Thoracic cage is composed especially of the sternum and ribs, as well as a large amount of costal cartilage. The rib cage has several functions. It provides protection to the vital thoracic organs, heart, lungs, aorta. The biomechanics of the rib cage assists in the breathing process. It supports the upper limbs and their movements in their relation to the body, and this article will discuss the anatomy and function of the rib cage. Sternum. The sternum is located superficially on the anterior chest wall and is easily palpable under the skin of the rib cage is the middle. The sternum is a flat bone ridge in the center of the thorax and is divided into three parts. Bones that have fused from top to bottom. These are manubrium, body, and Sifot process. Ribs. The ribs are flat bones that elongate from pairs 1 to 7, and the shorter again from the 8 to 12. Then there are 12 pairs of ribs that project from the vertebrae. These are divided into true ribs, foreribs, and floating ribs. True ribs 1 to 7. They are located in the thoracic cage and go from the first to the seventh in the direction from the head to the feet, cephalo to caudal. The first 7 pairs are attached directly to the sternum trunk section of the costal cartilage and are true ribs. Foreribs 8 to 10. Then there are 3 parts of foreribs which attach to the sternum indirectly, with costal cartilage attaching to the cartilage of the ribs above.
The fall ribs are strong bony structures that work together with the sternum and dorsal vertebrae to form the rib cage. They are attached posteriorly to the dorsal vertebrae, and this attachment is reinforced by a rib cartilage and floating rib 11 to 12. Then there are caged floating ribs because they don't achieve to the sternum in any manner.
Made up of the clavicle and the scapular or shoulder blade, which together give the structure to the shoulder. The clavicle articulates medially with the manubrium of the sternum and laterally with the acromion of the scapula. The clavicle is S-shaped and thin, lo located horizontally in the anterior region of the thorax, above the first rib. It is subcutaneous and easy to palpate along its entire length. The scapula is a large triangular flat bone lo located on the upper region of the posterior aspect of the thorax, between the level of the second and seventh ribs. The structure is acromion, coracoid process, glenoid fossa, subscapular fossa, subscapular fossa. The next we have the upper limb. The upper extremity is essential for our day-to-day functioning in alone as the perform movements such as grasping, writing, lifting, and throwing, among others. Will divide it by regions, which include the part of the arms and forearms, as well as the parts of the hands, where it has its own main functions. The humerus or arms bone is the longest and largest bone of the upper limbs, articulates in the proximal plane with the scapular and in the distal plane with two bones, the ulna and the radius, to form the elbow joint. The structure of the humerus is in the front part, greater tubercle, lesser tubercle, coronoid fossa, distal fossa, capitulum, trochlea, medial epicondyle. The part back is radial, groove, lateral epicondyle. The next is radius and ulna. The radius is the smallest bone of the forearm and is located in the lateral region to thumb side. of the forearm. Unlike the ulna, the radius is narrow, narrow at its proximal end and widest at its distal end. The ulna is the ulna is localized, located in the medial region of the forearm on the side of the little finger and is longer than the radius. The structures of the radius and ulna is olecranon, coronoid process, interose membrane, and it radial tuberosity and radial styloid process. The hand, the skeleton of the hand is made up of the carpal bone, located in the proximal region, the metacarpals in the intermediate region, and the phalanx in the distal region. Structure of the hand's bone is and carpals, hamate, pisiform, tricket, triquetrum, lunate, capitate, scaphoid, trapezoid, trapezium, and the proximal phalanx, sorry, and metacarpals is 5 metacarpals. Next, proximal phalanx, middle phalanx, and distal.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Evelyn Castillo, and today I'm going to talking about crucial part in the human anatomy, the structure of the human skeleton, focusing specifically in the pelvis. The pelvis, a vital role in various functions and the body, and I will explain and structure the difference between male and female pelvises and its essential functions. This structure of the pelvis is a bone structure that the made up of the several parts including the sacrum, ilium, ischium, and pubis. These components work together to form the pelvis, with the fundamental in supporting the weight and the upper body connected in the spine to the lower limbs, and providing protection for the pelvic organs. Difference between male and female pelvis. It's important to know that the pelvis differs between males and females. The male's pelvis is the generally narrower and higher, with the more acute subpubic angle, when the underformed will the pubic symphysis and contrast the female pelvis is wider and lower, featuring a more obtuse subpubic angles. This difference is crucial for accommodating childbirth and the wider and the low female pelvis facilitates the passage of the baby during delivery. Function of the pelvis. Now let's talking about the key functions in the pelvis. First side, the pelvis provides support of the wing of the trunk, which is essential for maintaining balances in posture. Secondary, it serves a professional structure for the pelvic organs, including the bladder, rectum, and reproductive organs. Lastly, the pelvis plays a significant role in connecting the lower limbs and the trunk with the base for movement and stability. Moreover, in females, the pelvis is especially adapted to participate the childbirth, allowing the passage of the baby through the vertebral canal. In conclusion, the pelvis is a complex structure with distinct differences between males and females, and its several critical functions in the body. Understanding the pelvis is essential not only for grasping its anatomical structure, but also for appreciating its role in supporting the body, protection vital organs, and enabling childbirth.
My name is Jocelyn Chavez, and I'm going to explain to you about the lower limbs. The lower limbs are essential for our mobility and play a fundamental role in supporting and protecting the body. These bones, along with muscles and joints, allow us to walk, run, jump, and perform various actions that require strength and stability in our legs and feet. The bones that form the lower limbs are the femur, and the tibia and fibula, and the foot. We start with the femur. The femur is the longest, strongest, and most voluminous bone in the human body. It is composed of compact bone tissue in the diaphysis and spongy bone tissue at the ends, which provides strength and some flexibility. A structure of the femur. The femur is composed of head, fovea capitis, greater trochanter, intertrochanteric crest, gluteal tuberosity, intercondylar fossa, lesser trochanter, linea aspera, medial and lateral epicondyles, medial and lateral condyles, and patella. The tibia and fibula. The tibia is the larger and medial of the two leg bones. The fibula is the thinner and more lateral of the two bones of the leg. Functions. The tibia and fibula are essential to the functions and structure of the leg, working together to support the weight of the body, facilitate movement, and provide stability to the ankle joints. Structure of the tibia and fibula. In the middle of the tibia and fibula is the interosseous membrane. It is in the tibia, composed the lateral and medial condyles, intercondylar eminence, tibial tuberosity, anterior border, medial malleolus, fibular notch. It is in the fibula composed head and lateral malleolus. Finally, the foot. It is composed of tarsal, metatarsal, and phalangeal bones. Functions. The bones of the foot provide support and stability to the body, cushioning impact during walking and distributing weight evenly. They facilitate movement by adapting to various surfaces. They also contribute to correct posture by ensuring balanced movement and a stable posture. A structure of the foot box. We see the tarsus composed of 7 bones. Cuboid, calcaneus, navicular, talus, and medial, intermediate, and lateral cuneiform bones. Next, we see the metatarsal with 5 metatarsal. Finally, like the hand, there are 14 phalanges. S2 has 3 bones except for the big two, which has only 2. Also known as hallux. Thank you for attention.
This was the skeletal system presentation by Group 1. We appreciate your attention. Thank you so much.